Imagine a world that has forgotten its own beginning. For 10 generations after the first man, a perfect silence reigned, a silence of peace, where every soul recognized only one creator. But time is a patient predator. It moves in the shadows between generations, waiting for the memory of the truth to fade just enough to strike. This is the story of the first time humanity lost its way. This is the chronicle of the man who stood alone for 9 centuries against a world of stone, and the day the earth and sky met to wash it all away. In those ancient days, 5 men lived among the people. Their names were Wad, Suah, Yaguth, Yauk, and Nasser. They were the pillars of their community, men of deep faith and wisdom who guided the people back to the path of Idris whenever they faltered. When they died, the world felt empty. The grief was a physical weight. It was then that a silent idea began to circulate. No one knew where it came from, but it sounded so logical. "Build statues of them," the whisper said. "Place them where they used to sit. When you see their faces, you will remember their goodness." It was meant to be a tribute, just a memory. At first, no one bowed. The statues were just cold stone, silent reminders of a golden age. But the first generation passed into the earth. The second generation followed. Soon, the original purpose of the stone figures was buried with those who carved them. Shaitan, the patient architect of this deception, watched and waited. He whispered to the newcomers that these were not just men, but beings with the power to bring rain, to grant health, to change destiny. The first shirk in human history was born not of malice, but of a slow, creeping forgetfulness. The world became a place of idols and iron-fisted kings. The pure faith was replaced by the worship of things that could neither hear nor speak. In the midst of this darkness lived a man named Nuh. At 50 years old, he was known as a simple shepherd and a man of unshakable honesty. He saw the corruption around him, and his heart ached for a people who had traded their souls for statues. Then came the light. Jibril descended with a voice that sounded like 1,000 voices speaking at once. The command was clear. Nuh was no longer just a shepherd. He was a messenger. He was sent to call the world back from the brink. He started at home. He spoke to his wife and his 4 sons, Sam, Ham, Japheth, and the youngest, Yam. He explained that these stones were useless, that the Creator was one. But his wife's heart had hardened like the idols she saw every day. She refused. His youngest son, lured by the power and prestige of the ruling elite, also turned away. The rejection of one's own family is a wound that never truly heals. Yet Nuh carried it as he walked into the public squares. For the next 950 years, Nuh became a ghost in his own city. He spoke in the markets. He spoke in the streets. He spoke under the cover of night and in the glare of the noon sun. His message was simple: worship Allah alone. These stones cannot save you. The response was a wall of mockery. The wealthy and the powerful looked at the small group of believers following Nuh, mostly the poor, the slaves, and the forgotten, and they laughed. "If you were a prophet, you'd be an angel," they sneered. "Why should we follow a man followed only by the lowest among us?" They put their fingers in their ears when he passed. They covered their faces so they wouldn't have to look at him.
The king, Dermasil, and later his even more cruel son, Nevlin, saw Nuh as a nuisance. They beat him until he was unconscious. They threatened to stone him to death. Yet every time he regained his breath, Nuh only prayed for their guidance. He watched generations be born, grow old, and die in their stubbornness. He saw fathers warn their children never to listen to the madman Nuh. After 9 centuries of patience, the door of mercy finally began to close. The revelation came. No one else would believe. The time for words had ended. The time for the great purge had begun. Nuh raised his hands to the sky. His prayer was not for guidance this time, but for justice. "My Lord, do not leave a single disbeliever on the face of the earth," he cried. "For if you leave them, they will only lead your servants astray and give birth to more like themselves." The command that followed seemed like madness to the world. "Build an ark," Allah commanded. Nuh did not go to the sea. He went to a dry, barren hill, far from any water. For 40 years he did nothing but plant trees, Indian oaks, strong and resistant to rot. The people laughed even harder. "Now he's a farmer," they joked. When the trees were tall enough, he cut them down. Under the guidance of Jibril, Nuh began to build a structure the likes of which the world had never seen. It was a fortress of wood and iron, 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, and 30 cubits high. 3 levels of reinforced timber, sealed with pitch and katram to make it waterproof. Every day, the elites would ride out to the hill just to mock the carpenter prophet building a ship in the desert. They even used the unfinished hull as a place of filth to insult him. Nuh simply wiped the sweat from his brow and told them, "You laugh now, but soon we will be the ones laughing when the punishment arrives." The sign was to be found in the most unlikely of places. The tandoor, the family oven, a place of fire, was to become the source of water. One morning, the air turned heavy as lead. The birds screamed in the sky. Nuh looked into the oven, and instead of heat, he saw water boiling and exploding upward. The countdown had reached 0. With the help of the angels, Nuh gathered the animals, a pair of each species, to ensure life would continue. The believers, only about 80 souls after nearly a millennium of work, climbed the ramp. Nuh looked for his wife and his son Yam. His wife stayed with her idols, choosing the world that was about to vanish. Then the sky didn't just rain, it opened. The water fell in giant cords, so thick that people could barely breathe the air. Simultaneously, the earth beneath their feet began to fracture. Billions of gushing fountains erupted from the ground. The sky and the earth were meeting, fulfilling a divine decree. The ark began to lift. As the water rose, Noah saw his son struggling against the current. Even then, the father's heart cried out, "My son, come with us, don't be with the disbelievers." But the boy's arrogance remained. "I will take refuge on a mountain," he shouted back. "It will save me." Noah's voice was desperate. Today there is no protection from the command of Allah. Before he could say another word, a mountain-sized wave intercepted them, and the boy was gone. The world became a void of gray water and howling winds. The great palaces of Nevlin, the giant statues of Wad and Suwa, the treasures of the elite, all of it was pulverized and buried under the mud. For 6 months, the ark was the only world that existed. It sailed over the peaks of the highest mountains, protected by the gaze of the Creator. Finally, the command came, "O earth, swallow your water. O sky, cease your rain." The waters receded, revealing a world that had been washed clean. On the 10th day of Muharram, the ark came to rest on the peaks of Mount Judi. Nuh stepped out into a new world. He was now the second father of humanity, the ancestor of every soul that would follow. Through his sons, Sam, Ham, and Japheth, the nations of the earth would be reborn. He lived for another 350 years after the flood, a living testament to the price of arrogance and the reward of unyielding faith. The story of Nuh is not just an ancient legend, it is a permanent warning etched into the history of our species. It reminds us that when we trade the eternal for the temporary and the Creator for the created, we build our own destruction. The ark may be gone, buried under the snows of time, but the waves are always waiting for those who forget. In the end, Nuh found this world to be like a house with two doors. He entered through one and he left through the other. But the truth he carried remains the only bridge that can cross the storm.
If this story touched your heart, leave a like and subscribe for more powerful stories from Islam. Assalamu alaikum.